What's going on, guys, and welcome back. Today, we are going to be looking at every single best deck to use from the early beginner days of rank 10 to the sweaty infinite ranks. What are the best decks in both terms of win rate and average cubes gained at every single rank in Marvel Snap? But this time, we're going to nerd out a little bit and go by the data. And frankly, I'll be honest, the results friggin' shocked me. I thought with Sherry still out there, even though her days are numbered, it would still look something like this. Even with her impending doom coming next week, I thought it would be fun to go ahead and see what is the next era of decks, comparing the best deck right now with one of the most dominant decks we've ever seen in Marvel Snap. Now, lastly, guys, where does today's data come from? Well, Untapped GG is what I'll be using. We'll be looking at decks with more than 750 games played. A good sample size. On top of that, thankfully, I reached out and they were kind enough to sponsor today's video. Untapped is truly a site that I use a ton as a content creator, and I think it's great to improve your Marvel Snap play. It's got things like tier list, deck stats, you can sort by rank, collection level, and then probably the best feature in the site, even though all of them are very handy, is the deck tracker. This is especially great if you like some RNG decks like Lockjaw or Jubilee, and you can find everything you need in the description below. Now, to kick things off, we start with the lower ranks, and I combined rank 10 all the way to rank 40, and surprisingly, we have a highest winning rate deck of the Zoo deck. Now, this is slightly below Sherry at this range, and guys, honestly, the deck is impressive with a 71.1% win rate. It's got consistent power, it's pretty straightforward with its overall strategy, so not too surprised here, and definitely a very strong competitive deck. However, just below that, we have it on reveal deck that is going to take the crown for the highest cube rate or the best deck in terms of average cubes. And it is an on reveal deck that I am shocked by. I think that maybe the extra Dr. Dooms and White Tiger plays at lower ranks is more surprising. As you can see, Sherry is going to edge out these decks just a little bit in terms of statistics, even though she'll be nerfed. I thought it was cool to compare it to Sherry. And then our runner-up deck for the top performer is this Patriot deck. And again, with Ultron and all of the power of his drones, again, not too shocked to see this here, but it's cool to see these different variations at the lower ranks. Now, moving right along, we go to ranks 40 through 60, and this will be our last cluster group before we go 10 ranks at a time. And I am happy to say my Rocks and Hawks deck is the current biggest win rate deck aside from Sherry. Not even that big of a difference between the two decks, 61.7% win rate in comparison to Sherry's 62.2%. The best part about the deck, though, is it's refreshing. Every game's a little bit different because of Agent Coulson, but it still gives you a great win rate overall. The highest cube rate deck this time is a Sarah Control bounce deck with Hit Monkey. It's cool to see the newest season pass card do pretty consistent at a high cube rate, and that might be because it is a new card and players are getting used to it, but nonetheless, it does have a 0.73 average cube gain in comparison to Shuri's 0.71. Now, the top performing deck after those is going to be this Discard blend right here. A silent sleeper. Discard is just not being played a lot, and it's cool to see it as a top performer from 40 to 60. Overall, it's not shocking. Sherry is the top at these ranks, but it's not a huge difference between the decks. Now, let's talk 60 to 70. Darkhawk is still going to reign as king in terms of both highest win rate and highest cube rate, which both are below Sherry at this threshold. The top performer is going to be a Sandman Electro deck, and I have a feeling we'll be seeing this a lot here in the video. Moving on up from rank 70 to 80, this is where things start to get a little sweaty. This is where players at the infinite rank the previous season start out. And surprisingly, at this rank, Sarah Darkhawk Control is both the highest win rate deck and highest cube rate outside of Sherry. Now, this doesn't surprise me that this popped up at this rank because the deck does take some skill to use with countering and predicting what the opponent is going to play. So I expected to see this deck at higher ranks, but it's cool to see that this deck is thriving between 70 and 80. And as far as the runner-up, this is where we see our Thanos Death deck. A deck that's starting to rise in popularity. I talked about it on the meta deck report. This deck just slaps. You can destroy all of your stones to clear up space and to go ahead and lower death's cost with Killmonger. At the same time, you have Dr. Doom and Odin. Very strong deck that is on the rise. Now, going from 80 to 90, we see the first Doom Wave appearance for our highest win rate deck, and it's barely below Sherry at a 58.3% win rate. Now, there are several variations of Doom Wave, but this one is just great at getting early initiative with Scorpion, Lizard, and Mr. Fantastic. And then you have the powerful Wave on turn 5 combo, where you can go ahead and play any card alongside She-Hulk. You have White Queen for the intel and Shang-Chi for the countering. And then below that, we have our highest Cube Raid deck, which is another version of a Darkhawk and Devil Dinosaur blend that uses Doctor Doom this time and the rare appearance of Maria Hill. Now, if you look at this compared to Shuri, both these decks can stand its ground, and our top performer runner-up is going to be our Sandman Control Electro Ramp deck. Now, this is not surprising given the current meta with Sarah as well as Hitmonkey, and this deck is just great at controlling, getting big power on the board at the same time limiting your opponent. Now, moving on, we go to what I thought was one of the more interesting ranks to see, and that is the sweaty last climb from 90 all the way to infinite. Now, you guys can see Shuri has probably her most dominant performance in comparison to the other decks at these ranks, and that's probably because players want to secure the infinite status. But our highest win rate deck was the last rank's top performer runner-up, and that is Electro Sandman, who is going to own not only the highest win rate outside of Shuri, but also the highest average cubes amongst all of the decks at this rank. But it's significantly below the Shuri decks between 90 and infinite. Again, similar to what I said before, not too surprised. It's good against the large majority of the decks out there. And as for the runner-up, again, we do see the Thanos Death deck making a heavy appearance between 90 and Infinite. To wrap everything up, we have Infinite Plus, and typically at this level, players are playing a bit less sweaty decks as they've already achieved Infinite. I'm excited to see what happens when more ranks come out within the Infinite leaderboards, and if that's going to have people sweat a bit more here. Now, as you can see, Shuri decks are pretty much non-existent. There isn't enough data to even report above 750 games. And as for the rest of the decks, they're all kind of just the same. It's the Thanos Death deck outside of something like Agatha. This is what we're seeing at the highest win rate of 50% and 0.08 average cubes. So I think the takeaway here is thank God Shuri is getting refined a little bit. There's some decks that can, punch up to the weight of Shuri decks, but they're not quite there. So it'll be interesting where everything settles once we get our next balance patch. Let me know down below if you want this to be a reoccurring series, and another huge thank you to Untapped GG for sponsoring today's video. Guys, good luck out there climbing with hopefully some of these decks that you saw today. And until the next one, happy snapping.